Hello and welcome back to Leominster Area Nerds. We're back here with our friend Jake. Last time we had him on, he taught us all about the basics of miniature model painting, in this case Warhammer 40K. So we've got him back today, and I think he's going to teach us a little bit about advanced model techniques, painting techniques. So things like highlighting and shading. So Jake, let's just get right into it. What are we doing?
Alrighty. First thing foremost is you got to grab yourself a shade. Now, there's all kinds of different shades, colors, everything. Like I've seen blue, purple, you know. Honestly, if you just need a couple of shades, you can get really far with just a black and a brown. And you're probably good to go for a long time. I found black, especially on a lot of brighter tones, works like reds or blues, really help accentuate like certain colors, especially on like, say, armor, like our Space Marines here. And shading is one of those things where, please do it, because it's just, shading is not hard whatsoever, but it makes such a big difference. As soon as you start putting that shade into the recessed details of the model, everything starts to pop, and it makes it feel like it's weird. A model is a three-dimensional object, but for some reason when you just slap a base coat of color on it and you just leave it there, it feels flat. But as soon as you put on that shade, it feels like a full three-dimensional object of something that you can touch and you can see all the texture and feeling of everything. And then it creates that depth of almost real life really easily.
So it basically just sort of accentuates the details of the actual shape of the model, regardless of what kind of light it's in, how big it is. It just makes it look more real and to scale.
Absolutely. It makes such a big difference, and it'll show up on camera and everything, that this like somewhat flat looking, almost mannequin looking like Space Marine is gonna look like he just walked out of a comic book or something. He'll look fantastic. Yeah. The first thing we gotta do is take a little bit of our shade, like all of our paints, just shake it up a little bit so all those chemicals and stuff can bind to one another. Crack it open, and we don't actually need to use the wet palette for this, though I will, just to get some of the soap and stuff out of it, since I cleaned my brushes a while ago, is to get some of the wash, or the shade, sometimes people call it a wash, and just stick a bunch of it onto our paper plate or what have you. And then from there, wash off your brush. I like to, now this is a big important step, is that a lot of people, when they shade their miniatures, they usually end up grabbing like a really big brush, taking a lot of shade and just slathering a miniature all over with it. Sometimes that can be a good idea. Sometimes that can be, depending on like the kind of paint you want to use. Say you're painting a medieval knight and he's just all silver head to toe, and you want to tone down all that silver to be more of a steel color. Then yeah, you can just slap some black wash all over the dude, and you get a much more better color. Sometimes though, especially with a lot more matte colors, like our blue Space Marine here,
yeah,
a lot of the time it's going to dry and look almost kind of waxy in a way, and kind of have this coffee stain like effect that honestly just doesn't look very good. Yeah. So what you want to do is take a small brush and then just take a little bit of wash or shade, I keep making the mistake, and just take the little bit that's on your brush and just run it into the details. Sometimes it's just a matter of just touching the corners or the recesses, like of the, like say like armor plates here on the knee pad, and just touching the tip of your brush and running in all that shade right there. And you just got to carry on doing that for the rest of your model, and then you'll have a nice depth to everything. A lot of certain colors won't look good with certain other kind of shade colors. Like once we get to the gold, I'll slap on some brown. But for the most part, black will do us good. And like I said, most of the time, black and brown will serve us pretty well.
So, Jake, while you're applying your null oil to your character to give it that shading, I'm going to be working with my strong tone, which came in my War Games Hobby Starter paint set. So, a little bit of a different technique, I would imagine, but it should come out with a similar effect. And it's a perfectly fine option for beginners to use, because this set is so cheap, and it's for you know, getting into the hobby. So, Jake, how should I go about applying my strong tone?
Similarly like what I'm doing. Just take a small brush and then just put the strong tone into all the recesses. Try not to slather it on like some people like to do, or like on the box it shows somebody literally dipping it in a cup full of it, which gives me nightmares. But other than that, yeah.
So put a little bit on my plate, wet my brush.
Don't necessarily have to wet your brush. I just did that because there was soap in mine.
And does this have to be watery, or?
It's watery by itself.
Okay.
That's how it works. It just so all the it's designed like other shades and washes to recede into the details and stay there.
So I'm gonna put this in just basically any crevice on my Space Marine.
Yep. Certain things like the metallics, like the Imperialis on his chest, or some of the gold trim, you can just slap right on. I find doing that with metallics seems to work better than just like on matte colors.
Okay. What do you think?
Alrighty.
I basically just covered all, like, the dark areas, the crevices, I even painted all the white because I thought it made it look dirtier. He does just kind of look like he's covered in muddy water now, but
That's how they always kind of end up looking for a little bit, but once everything really starts to set and dry, it starts to becoming more of a consistent like shadow.
yeah. Okay. So where do we go from here?
After this is now we move on to highlighting, which really helps pop out all those you know how we with the shades we can put everything into the recesses? Now everything that's above those recesses, like all the edges and corners and stuff, now we're making those pop out to really help things give even more definition.
Okay. So can you show me how that's done?
Absolutely.
So we're gonna move on to highlighting now, and Jake's got all his highlight colors lined up, all the ones he plans on using, and I'm actually gonna use those too since my basic kit didn't come with any highlighting colors. So Jake, what do we do to get started with highlighting our
First
miniatures?
thing for highlighting is that we want to go for our first, our primary color, which here is usually blue, or yours is kind of a mishmash. But so right now we're probably going to go for what is like a lighter blue color. So right now, and I'm pretty sure this is it. Yep, Calgar blue. So we'll be doing that, and just the way with how we do highlighting is actually a lot easier than you think it is, though it can be incredibly tedious to the point of nausea, one or the other. I know how to paint models, I don't know how to speak English. I haven't even opened this up yet. Woo, fun! Just put a little bit on our palette, if it'll ever come off. There we go. And just like with our base colors that we did in our previous part, if you've seen it, take a little bit of water, thin it down, because you always want to thin your paints, especially with your highlights.
In your paints.
Yep. That's probably one of the most important rules about highlighting or just painting in general is thin your paints. Put globby grossness all over your models, you're going to get a globby gross model. Okay. Now, the thing is with a lot of edge highlighting is you can take like your brush, get a little bit more so on the tip of your brush, try and get some of the excess off. Take the tip. And a good thing, a good example here is the gorget around the neck of the Space Marine, which is like the collar bit, and just run the edge of the brush all along the side, just so it catches the corner.
Okay, so right on the front corner of the gorget.
Yep. If you got red there, get a little bit of red. We give up.
Done.
Well, I
Can't
give
do
up.
it. Can't do it anymore. What is it? We've been here for 4 hours now. That's not even as long as our last shoot.
No, but it feels longer.
Yeah.
That's
This
the thing
is
with
stressful.
Yeah, that's the thing with hobby painting and model painting and whatever you want to call it. It is not for the faint of heart or those with very short attention spans and patience,
Yeah.
which I am of all three.
Basing was it just kind of time consuming to get enough layers on that you cover the whole thing. And it's really just one, you only have to worry about one thing at a time. But when it comes to shading and particularly highlighting, when you're going for any sort of realism, but even advanced.
Also, don't be us.
painters.
Don't highlight and shade your models in the dark.
At home, I've got 3 lights on a small area of my desk, and they're all brighter, or as bright as these lights that are trying to fill an entire room. So yeah, that was one recurring theme over the course of today.
Yeah, we're going to show you some examples towards the end of the video of ours that we painted that look a little better and have a bit more time and energy put into them.
Yeah.
But for now, that's probably about it for our models. Hopefully you guys will have learned something, and hopefully you can get started in the hobby yourselves.
Yeah, and we've covered basing, we've covered shading and highlighting, and we may or may not do an episode on what's known as basing, which is exactly what it sounds like, essentially decorating the base of your Warhammer figurines.
Or any models for that matter.
Yeah, to look sort of
More within like a scene.
real worldy. Yeah. I actually have already, because I was getting probably overly excited, purchased my own basing set. So it comes with everything I will probably ever need to base my figures when I decide that I'm done.
We do have an example here of a really, this is actually the very first model I ever painted with using some texture paints that over time dry and crackle like an actual kind of like a desert base. There are other kinds that look like mud and blood and all kinds of horrible ickiness.
Yeah, those are really cool.
Yeah. So you can actually get a lot done with this and make a cool little scene. You can get other little decorations like little tufts of plastic grass, skulls, all kinds of other things. And you can really create a really interesting scene just with even a single model.
Yeah. Then, despite the small size of these bases, there's a lot of room to get creative. I mean, you saw in my basing set, there's snow, fake grass, fake dirt and rocks and sand, barbed wire. You can put footprints, lava, whatever you can imagine. If you can paint it or model it, you can put it on your base, and it's really seems like a lot of fun. Probably just as stressful.
It can be when you're not doing it in the dark.
So that, I think, wraps it up for today. We appreciate it, Jake. We appreciate you putting up with this to teach myself and some of our viewers how to highlight and shade today. And hopefully we can do some more episodes on things like basing and anything else you can imagine for Warhammer and other models and tabletop games. So for myself and Jake, this has been your second episode of LAN Games, and we appreciate you watching and hope to see you back here for another episode.
Peace.